I was 28 when I learned my parents never wanted two daughters. Just one. And I wasn't the one they picked. I can't begin to explain the kind of pain that crawls into your bones when you realize you were never meant to be part of your own family's plan. But that's exactly what I felt that Thanksgiving night when my uncle, drunk and unfiltered as always, blurted out that my parents had only planned for one child during the pregnancy. They were shocked when the skin showed too, he said, swishing his wine. Your mom cried for hours. I'm Rebecca, and I have a twin sister named Danielle. She's 12 minutes older than me, and apparently that was enough for her to be dubbed the chosen one. Growing up in Asheville, North Carolina, I became the filler twin. I wasn't a bad kid. I got straight A's, won spelling bees, science fairs, and debate championships. But Danielle? She cried during her school play once and was praised for trying so hard. That was enough to overshadow the fact that I played Little Red Riding Hood in the same play, and nailed every line. In elementary school, Danielle would bring home C's and get kisses for giving it her best shot. I brought home consecutive A+S and got a shrug. When I showed my parents the blue ribbon I won in 4th grade for my renewable energy project, after interviewing real scientists and building a model wind turbine, they smiled and said, "That's nice, honey." Danielle had a tough volleyball practice. It was the same every single time. The favoritism wasn't just subtle, it was announced like gospel at every family gathering. "Danielle's our little leader," Dad would say, ruffling her hair. "She always looks out for her baby sister." I was 12 minutes younger, not 12 years, and yet somehow that made me the permanent sidekick in my own home. By the time high school came around, I had hardened. I stacked my schedule with AP classes, clubs, volunteer work, anything to prove I was worth something. Danielle? She breezed through on charm, with a GPA barely scraping by, but she still got the admiration. When I was named valedictorian and offered a full scholarship to Northwestern, my parents were too busy lamenting that Danielle didn't get into her top choice school to even clap for me. Still, I hoped college would change something. Maybe being away would shift the way they saw me. I studied computer science, worked 2 jobs, kept a 4.0 GPA. When I came home for holidays, I'd wait for that spark of recognition. It never came. Instead, they gushed about Danielle's new boyfriend, her new haircut, the time she, bravely, dropped out of community college after 1 semester to find herself. But it wasn't until junior year that everything finally clicked into place. That Thanksgiving, Uncle Mike got a bit too generous with the brandy. He chuckled, talking about my mom's pregnancy. "Your mom panicked when the doctor said it was twins. She only wanted 1 baby. Your dad just said, 'We'll manage somehow.' And, well, somehow meant focusing on one and winging it with the other, huh?" The laughter stopped. I froze. Danielle looked at me with pity, which somehow made it worse. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I replayed it all, the missed recitals, the silent pride, the trophies left untouched on the kitchen counter. They hadn't just favored Danielle. They had, in a very real way, chosen her over me. I didn't cry. Something inside me simply shut off. From that moment on, I stopped caring about earning their love. I threw myself fully into my career, landing a job at a high-growth tech company in Austin. Within 3 years, I was promoted to senior engineer, pulling in 6 figures and holding stock options that would soon multiply thanks to an IPO. Meanwhile, Danielle got engaged after 2 months of dating some rich finance guy she met at a bar in Charleston. My parents? They were ecstatic. They couldn't remember the name of the company I worked for, but they could list every flower in Danielle's wedding bouquet. Then came the betrayal that finally broke me. Our grandmother, the only person in our family who treated us equally, had left us each $25,000 specifically for our future weddings. She had made it very clear, split it evenly. She told me in private, "I know how they treat you, sweetheart. This is just for you. Something that's yours." But I never saw a cent. Danielle wanted a destination wedding in Italy. She wanted a designer dress, custom cocktail menus, a celebrity photographer. Instead of telling her to cut back or asking her fiancé to contribute, my parents drained my half of the inheritance, without even telling me. I only found out months later. Uncle Mike again, drunk at Easter dinner, let it slip. That Amalfi Coast thing must have cost a fortune. He slurred. Good thing you used both wedding funds, huh? I confronted them the next day. My mom waved her hand, saying, Oh honey, we were going to tell you. We'll pay you back eventually. My father said, Well, Danielle needed it more. You're so focused on your work, you probably won't even want a big wedding. In that moment, standing in the kitchen of the house I grew up in, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just a vast, bottomless hollowness. I went home, opened my laptop, and wrote an email that took me 28 years to compose. I know what you did with the wedding fund. You took something that was meant to be mine without even asking. But that's just a symbol of the way you've treated me my whole life, as if I were less. I'm done being the child you didn't want. Don't contact me again unless it's to return my money. Then I blocked them. Their numbers. Their Facebooks. All of it. And for the first time in my life, I could breathe. After I sent that email, something shifted in me. Not just emotionally, I mean chemically. Like my nervous system had spent 28 years holding its breath and finally exhaled. The silence that followed was beautiful. No calls. No snide Facebook comments. No condescending updates about Danielle's wedding favors or honeymoon spa upgrades. Just quiet. Just me. I poured everything into my career, taking on complex code bases, managing junior developers, even giving a keynote at a Women in Tech summit. And when my company's IPO finally dropped, let's just say the stock options my parents never asked about were now worth triple Danielle's entire wedding. I bought a condo in a high-rise overlooking downtown Austin, joined a yoga studio that didn't smell like mildew, and started therapy twice a week. For the first time in my adult life, I was surrounded by people who saw me, really saw me, and valued what I brought to the table. But then the silence shattered. 2 weeks ago, in the middle of a product planning meeting, my phone started buzzing. Uncle Mike again. 4 missed calls in 5 minutes. I ignored the first 3, but something about the fourth one felt different. He never calls unless he's drunk, and it was 11 a.m. When I finally picked up, his voice was shaking. Becca, it's your parents. There was an accident. Suddenly I was ice. Frozen in my ergonomic chair, listening to the sound of every past trauma sharpening into a dagger. A truck ran a red light. He continued. Hit them hard. Your dad's in critical condition. Your mom has multiple fractures. They've been in the ICU for days. Days. No one told me. No one even tried. I think, Uncle Mike said quietly, they want to see you. Then came the real twist of the knife. Their insurance lapsed 6 months ago. Financial stuff. Credit card debt, bad investments. They're drowning. The hospital's already talking about stopping treatment without payment. I asked about Danielle. She visited once. Said she couldn't help. Didn't want to ask her husband for money this soon after their honeymoon. Said it was complicated. Complicated. This is the same woman who drained my inheritance to fund a wedding with fire dancers and imported peacocks. But suddenly asking her new husband to help keep her parents alive is too awkward? I stared out my window for a long time after that call. The skyline never looked so indifferent. For 3 days I couldn't focus. My brain kept pinging between pity and rage. My therapist called it emotional whiplash. One part of me, the daughter, the human, felt an ache. The other part? The woman who had been a second-class citizen in her own home for nearly 3 decades? She wanted to let them drown. And then Danielle texted me. Heard you're doing great at work. This is your chance to do the right thing. Don't punish them. They're still our parents. The right thing? I almost threw my phone. Was using my wedding fund for a luxury event the right thing? Was ignoring my achievements, my existence, the right thing? I left her on read. A few days later, my parents called. It was surreal. Like a blast from another life. My mother sounded like a ghost, slurred, weak, probably doped up on pain meds. Sweetheart, we're in trouble. The bills, they said $200,000 or more. I didn't respond. We know we made mistakes as parents. She added, almost rehearsed. I cut her off. No. You don't. And you never will. Then my dad chimed in, groggy but sharp. Becca, this isn't fair. We're your parents. Family helps family. That sentence, family helps family, made something inside me detonate. Where was that attitude when you stole my wedding fund? When you skipped my graduation? When you chose Danielle every single time? No. You don't get to say that now. There was silence. Then sobbing. You're being cruel. My mom whispered. I took a deep breath, calm and clear. No. I'm being honest. And I'm being free. And then, for the first time in my life, I hung up on them. Later that night, I texted Danielle one final message. They're your parents too. Try taking responsibility for once in your life. Then I blocked them all again. But the guilt? It lingered. Every night I'd sit on my balcony, glass of wine in hand, watching the skyline flicker and trying not to wonder, am I a monster? Would a good daughter help? Is cutting off your own blood too harsh, no matter what they've done? But every time I asked those questions, the answers came in flashbacks. Them missing my math championship. Laughing when I cried about feeling unseen. Tossing aside the one inheritance I ever had. This wasn't a question of money. This was the final test in a lifelong pattern. They only call when they need something. And this time, I wasn't picking up. It was 8:07 p.m. on a Tuesday when the doorbell rang. I was in the middle of reviewing API documentation for our upcoming launch, sipping a glass of Merlot I'd been saving for months. My apartment smelled like bergamot and fresh basil. Peace, finally. I hadn't ordered anything. My friends know better than to drop by unannounced. And yet there it was again, ding-dong. I walked to the door, half expecting it to be a neighbor with the wrong floor. Instead, I saw a ghost in designer heels. Danielle. Standing there in a champagne-colored trench coat, full glam, a handbag I recognized from a fashion blog, Hermes, easily $12,000. The bag alone could have covered a month of our parents' hospital stay. She didn't knock. She just waited, like the princess she's always been, expecting the world to open for her. I opened the door slowly and didn't move from the frame. Well, I said, arms crossed. If it isn't the bride of the year. Without asking, she walked right in. Somehow, she still carried herself like the favorite child even on the battlefield she created. She glanced around my place, my floor-to-ceiling windows, curated bookshelves, minimalist furniture, and gave a dry, "Cute. Very you?" I didn't respond. She stood in the middle of my living room like she owned it, and exhaled dramatically. Mom's treatment isn't covered. Dad needs emergency surgery for internal bleeding. They're talking about suspending care unless we pay something up front. I didn't blink. They might sell the house, she added, tightening her grip on the Hermes. That almost made me laugh. The house I grew up in, the one where I was invisible, suddenly mattered. And? I asked. You can help. Just like that. No apology. No acknowledgement. No. I'm sorry for taking your wedding fund and never looking back. Just a confident assumption that I'd come in, like always, and save them. I walked to my desk, grabbed my laptop, and sat it between us. You want to talk numbers? Let's talk numbers. I opened my investment dashboard, portfolio balances, and the live ticker from our IPO. Danielle's eyes darted across the screen, and I saw the exact moment it hit her. I had become something she couldn't outshine. These are my stock options, I said. They're worth more than you and your husband's assets combined. She flushed. You researched me, I said, sipping my wine. Check the IPO figures. Did you do that much research before draining my inheritance? Or before you told your husband helping our parents would be complicated? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I have more than enough to cover the hospital bills. I could pay for their treatment tomorrow if I wanted to. She brightened slightly, and I stopped her cold. But I don't. Her jaw slackened. The silence between us was sharp enough to cut steel. You think I'm cruel? I asked. You used my wedding fund so you could drink champagne in Italy. You watched our parents ignore me for years and said nothing. You don't get to lecture me about family now. She stood motionless, clinging to that overpriced purse like a life raft. They're going to lose everything, she whispered. So did I said. Over and over. I lost birthday parties, graduations, job promotions, love. I lost my sense of worth. They took all that from me. And when they ran out of money, they came looking for their backup plan. I walked to the door and opened it. We're done. You'll regret this, she snapped, the old Danielle showing through. Maybe, I said. But not tonight. She didn't slam the door on her way out. She didn't cry. She just left, silent, stunned, and visibly shaken that the twin sisters she used to overshadow had finally outgrown the shade. After she left, I poured myself another glass of that expensive wine. I drank it slowly, staring out at the skyline. And for the first time since childhood, I felt untouchable. But the next morning, my phone exploded. Apparently, Danielle didn't go quietly. The next morning, my phone lit up like a slot machine. 32 missed calls. 17 voicemails. Family group chats I hadn't seen in 2 years suddenly buzzing with life. Cousins. Aunts. Strangers I hadn't spoken to since high school. The sudden uptick in attention could only mean one thing. Danielle had launched a smear campaign. Sure enough, my notifications were full of lines like, Becca's changed. Money's made her cold. She's letting our parents suffer to prove a point. I don't even recognize her anymore. Danielle had gone full Broadway. I could practically see her pacing around her mansion, sobbing into monogrammed tissues and playing the role of betrayed daughter number 1. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop. Because while Danielle had been busy collecting attention, I had been collecting evidence. I compiled a folder titled, The Real Story. Simple, cold, and unarguable. Inside were scanned copies of Grandma's will, with both our names and the instruction to split the $50,000 wedding fund. Bank statements showing the exact withdrawals made by my parents for Danielle's wedding vendors. Screenshots of Danielle's text messages. We just needed it more. You won't miss it. My email to my parents after the discovery, calm, direct, and ignored. A spreadsheet showing how much I'd spent covering family obligations over the years. Birthdays, school fees, emergencies, that mysteriously coincided with their vacations. Then, just for good measure, I included a screenshot of my current portfolio value. Not to boast. Just to underscore the irony, I had the power to help. I just no longer had the will. With one click, I dropped the entire folder into the old family group chat. The one Grandma used to moderate. The one they forgot I still had admin rights to. Then I renamed the group. Here's the truth since you won't hear it from her. And I went to brunch. It took less than an hour for the reactions to pour in. My cousin Lacey was the first. Holy sh*t. I had no idea. Then my Aunt Mira. Wait, they took your inheritance. One brave uncle, usually quiet. Why didn't they just ask Danielle's husband for help? Then radio silence. It was beautiful. Danielle tried to do damage control with one of her signature deflections. This isn't what it looks like. You're manipulating things. To which I replied simply. Facts aren't manipulative. They're just inconvenient for liars. And with that I left the chat. But it wasn't over yet. Later that afternoon, I got a message from Uncle Carl, the only relative I still mildly respected. You've been silent for years and they assumed it meant weakness. I'm glad you finally reminded them who you are. It hit harder than I expected. Because for years, I'd believed silence was weakness. That not defending myself, not calling them out, not fighting back meant I was noble. But it didn't. It just meant they got to rewrite the narrative. Well, not anymore. That night, I took one more step. I accepted the job offer that had been sitting in my inbox for 2 weeks. Team lead at our new San Diego office. Bigger salary. More equity. A fresh start in a city where no one calls me Danielle's twin. I listed my apartment for sale the next day. By the end of the week, I was packing boxes and deleting old contact numbers one by one. Each one was like cutting a tether from a hot air balloon I'd been anchored to my whole life. And just when I thought it was finally quiet again, Danielle sent me one last message. Danielle showed up like a ghost dressed in Gucci. I was reading project briefs, half tipsy on a glass of wine I'd been saving for a real celebration, when the bell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. And when I checked the peephole, there she was, blowout curls, full makeup, an outfit that cost more than a month's rent, and a $15,000 Hermes bag dangling off her wrist like a trophy. The irony was almost too perfect. That purse alone could have covered a chunk of our parents' hospital bills. But instead of calling her wealthy husband, she showed up here, at my door. The forgotten twin. I opened the door. I didn't move. Well, I said, calm as glass. Didn't expect to see you in the flesh. Running out of people to guilt? She walked in without asking. Of course. Her eyes scanned my apartment like she was taking inventory. I watched her judge my walls, my decor, my art. I saw her comparing it all to her suburban palace. Then she turned. You're doing well, she said flatly. Really well. I didn't respond. She stood there for a beat, rehearsing something in her head. Mom's therapy isn't covered. Dad needs emergency surgery. They're selling the house, Becca. She said my name like it was a favor. I sipped my wine. So call your rich husband, I said. Or pawn that purse. Her cheeks flushed. But she pressed on. This isn't about me. You can help. You've got the money. That's when I walked to my desk, grabbed my laptop, and flipped the screen around to show her. You want numbers? Let's look at numbers. Her eyes widened as the digits registered, my stock options, bonuses, equity. Then I dropped my investment portfolio, pay stubs, and latest offer letters from 3 rival companies, 6-figure signing bonuses, all of them. She went pale. You did all this, she said, almost stunned. Without anyone. Without stealing anyone's future? Yes. I did. Her voice cracked. You're really not going to help them? I closed the laptop slowly and leaned in. No, Danielle. I'm not. Because when they drained my inheritance for your wedding, you didn't blink. When I needed a family, you stayed quiet. When they abandoned me emotionally for decades, you thrived on it. And now that the ATM is out of cash, I'm selfish? She flinched. They're your parents too, she whispered. Exactly. 2. Not only. And you've coasted on being the only one that mattered your whole life. I stood up. You want to know the truth? I could have paid the hospital bills. Easily. I didn't because I shouldn't have to. And deep down you know that. She started to speak again, but I walked to the door and opened it. We're done here. She stood there a second longer, lips parted, fists clenched around that ridiculous purse. One last attempt. You'll regret this. When they lose everything, when they die, you'll remember that you could have helped. I tilted my head, truly, genuinely calm. The only thing I regret is not cutting you all off sooner. And I shut the door. That night, I poured myself the bottle I'd been saving for a celebration, $200 vintage red from Napa. I sipped it on my balcony as the city pulsed below me, alive and uncaring. The next morning, she launched her final attack. She texted every family member. Mom cries every night. Dad's condition is deteriorating. Becca's letting them suffer. And for a moment it worked. I felt the old guilt. The ache. The question, am I heartless? Then I remembered everything. And I responded the only way that felt right. I posted a folder in the family group chat, every receipt. Grandma's will. The bank withdrawals. Screenshots of Danielle saying she wouldn't help. My own inheritance being converted into peonies, pastries, and a private yacht in Greece. Then I wrote. They didn't lose a daughter. They lost access to one. And if being free means being the villain in your story, then I'll wear that role proudly. The chat went dead silent. Only one message came through. Holy sh*t. You actually did it. Angela, my cousin. And that was the last time I looked back. I sold my condo a month later, above asking. Moved to San Diego, took the team lead job, upgraded to a penthouse with an ocean view. I'm dating someone kind now. Someone who sees me. I have friends who don't ask me to shrink. A few days ago, I got one final message from Danielle. Mom's crying because of you. I sent her a screenshot of my portion of the inheritance, labeled and gone. Then I wrote. She had 27 years to cry for how she treated me. Her tears are not my responsibility. Blocked. Again. Forever.